Hey everyone, it's Affy, and today I am here to do my what month are we in? I never know. September. I'm here to do my September wrap up. So this month I read 12 books, which is even more than I read last month. I think I did 10 last month. So I'm definitely just kind of knocking them out right now. I don't know what it is. I'm getting through one book every 2 days, so about half a book per day. So I've been going pretty steady and pretty quickly through these books. But I've got 12 books for you today, and I am just going to hop right in. The first book that I read in September is The Scoundrel in Her Bed. This is by Lorraine Heath. This is the third book in the Sins for All Seasons series. And this book is about Finn Truelove and Lady Lavinia. Lavinia happens to be the bride from the second book. She was supposed to marry Gilly's husband, but she ran away on their wedding day. And so you come to find out that Finn and Lavinia happened to have known each other when they were young. Finn was supposed to kill her horse at the time. Her father was kind of mean, and her horse had thrown her off, and so her father said, "We're going to get rid of the horse. We're going to have the horse killed." So Finn was the boy that came to take the horse away to go be murdered, basically. He sees her and she's crying and begging him, "Please don't take my horse away." And he feels so bad that he actually saves the horse. He'll bring Sophie every Tuesday and they'll go for a ride. And this is like late at night, and they're teenagers. I think she's like 15 and he's 20 maybe. So they're pretty young and they're sneaking out at night every Tuesday to go ride Sophie. And so, of course, they start to fall in love over 2 years of them spending all this time together. And eventually he tells her he loves her. They plan to run away together, but the day that they are supposed to meet to run away, he doesn't show up. And so years later, they bump into each other. So I really, really like this book. This is another great story in the Sins for All Seasons series. I feel like this whole series has just been blowing me out of the water. I'm loving this series so far. I really like this book. Usually people don't enjoy flashbacks. I actually like the flashbacks to their days when they were young and spending time together. They didn't show specifically what happened the day of when he didn't show up. They just kind of explained it. But it was still really, really sweet, and just them as this two young little teenagers, just yeah, it was so sweet, the beginning with them being young and falling in love. That was my favorite part of the story. I love second chance romances, and this one was, it knocked it out of the park for me. I gave this 5 stars, really enjoyed it. Lorraine Heath is just, I love her. She's my new favorite author. I have yet to give any of these books anything lower than a 5-star. So, The Scoundrel in Her Bed. So the second book that I read in September is Lisa Kleypas. This is Love in the Afternoon. This is the last book in the Hathaway series. And we've got a step back here. So this is the book of Beatrix and Christopher. Christopher is at war, and Prudence has been writing him. Prudence is Beatrix's friend. And Prudence decides that she does not want to deal with writing letters to this man away at war. She's kind of vapid and very shallow, and so Prudence tells Beatrix, "If you want to write to him, you can do so. I don't care enough to write this man back." So Beatrix starts writing these letters to Chris, and for several months they're writing back and forth to each other. One day she gets a letter from him, and it's basically him professing his love. And Beatrix realizes she's gone a little too far down the rabbit hole now. She feels awful. Clearly, he thinks she's Prudence. And so she writes him one last letter saying, I can't write to you anymore. So I really, really like this book as well. This book was another 5 star for me as far as the Hathaway series goes. I think I gave the first book a 3 star, the second book 4 stars, and the last 3 remaining books, including this one, 5 stars. So I've enjoyed this series quite a bit. Beatrix is the family member who is obsessed with animals. Like, she is just obsessed with animals. They've got all kinds of animals in the house running around, but there is Christopher's dog. And Christopher's dog is a mean little thing. He comes back with him from war. There was a little bit about, him going to war and the PTSD that he got coming back home and the way that he felt basically being home from war and all the people that he'd missed and lost in the war, and feeling a certain type of way about that. He's considered a hero and been given all these awards, but he doesn't feel like a hero. And he's having all these dreams at night, and he's waking up screaming and stuff. So the PTSD that he's feeling from being away at war it's another thing that's woven through the story. I really, really like this one. There's nothing I can say that is wrong with this book. It just 5 stars from start to finish, for me at least. I really, really love this one. The next book I read in September was The Harlot Countess. This is by Joanna Shupe. This is the second book in the series Wicked Deceptions. In this book we have Maggie and Simon. And Maggie was being courted by Simon for a while when she had her first season, I believe. And then a scandal broke out, and she basically was ruined, and Simon turned his back on her. He believed what everybody said and never stopped to talk to her and ask her what truly happened. So she's really upset at him. And 10 years later, she is the artist of a cartoon in the paper. Obviously, as a woman, she's anonymous, but her cartoon tends to make a lot of fun of him. Draws pictures about other people, but he's kind of the main focus of her cartoon. She's constantly making fun of him in the paper, and he's just kind of annoyed by it. He's like, who is this person and why are they constantly making fun of me? But he sees her at a bookshop one day, and he realizes he's still got some feelings for her, and so he starts trying to win her back. Maggie has this thing about calling herself the half Irish harlot because she's part Irish, because it's what people in town call her. They call her the half Irish harlot. And so she decides she's going to take that moniker and make it her own. She's going to be proud of it. And so when she throws these parties, she will call them parties from the half Irish harlot. And she'll tell people herself that she's the half Irish harlot, and it really, really bothers Simon. He doesn't like hearing that about her. When people say that about her, he gets very upset. There's a part in the beginning where they don't really talk about what happened the 10 years ago, and that part kind of annoys me. It takes like almost half the book before they finally sit down and talk about what happened that night. And it just feels like if they would have gotten to it in the beginning when they first saw each other again, it could have saved some drama. I did feel like he was a bit annoying in the beginning too. He just seemed a bit, he was like, he wanted to talk to her again, but he was like annoyed at her at the same time. This was very spicy. There was a lot of sex in this book. Even the book prior to this, also a lot of sex. Like, I think this whole series is just gonna be packed full of steamy scenes. That's what it's looking like so far. Not anything wrong with that. I was just kind of bowled over by how much was in this book. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. I did like it. I just I felt like Simon was a little bit of an annoyance in the beginning, and I would have preferred that they, like I said, spoke to each other about what happened that night earlier in the book to kind of prevent some of the drama in the beginning of this story. So, other than that, though, I really like this one. This was another good book by Joanna Shupe. So the next book I read in September is 10 Kisses to Scandal. This is by Vivian Lorette, and this is part of the Misadventures in Matchmaking series. The first book I read in this series was about the first sister who lost her memory. I can't remember the name of the book off the top of my head. So this is the second book in that series. And in this book we have Nicholas and Briar, and Briar is the youngest sister in the matchmaking agency. She and her sisters work for their uncle as matchmakers, and Briar's the youngest sister, and she has been kind of left to do all the menial tasks, the minor work, and she wants to actually become a matchmaker. She wants her sisters to allow her to do some of the heavier lifting. But the first time she does, she makes a big mistake. And so the agency is kind of in a bit of a scandal because of her. One day she is across the street from the agency, and she is planning to go find a new customer for the agency. There's a new duke in town, and she's hoping to get his business. And she's waiting for a hack, and she's waiting for a taxi, and sees this guy who has come out of a gaming den, and he is making out with some girl on the side of the street, like hardcore, just making out with this girl, and she's just like scandalized. But they end up talking, and he ends up taking her in his carriage because she can't seem to find a hack. So he's like, fine, I'll let you ride with me. And they have a bit of a meet cute, actually. But then they don't see each other for months, and when they do see each other again, sparks start to fly, and the story gets really interesting from there. Nick was supposed to be this giant rake, but to be honest, he wasn't. He was just a nice guy who happened to have been making out with some girl on the day she met him. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. I definitely liked it more than I liked the first book. That one felt a little rushed. This one felt like it took its time a bit more. And yeah, so I ended up giving this one 4 stars. And yeah, I would say Briar is my favorite part of this story. She's just very cute. And I do have some quotes from this book that I'm going to read for you. Okay, so I do have 2 quotes from this book. They're somewhat similar, but you'll see. They're somewhat similar. So the first one is, what was he like as a child? What were his dreams of the future? Did he once have a dog, a favorite color? She was surprised she hadn't leapt across his desk, a crazed look in her eyes, and said, "Tell me every thought you've ever had." And in that new, barrierless moment between them, she would have written down each detail on scraps of paper, stuffed them up her sleeves, down her chemise, rolled up inside her gloves, just to keep them with her. And then the second one I have is, instead he simply pulled her close and listened, and even after their journey yearned to hear more, to learn everything about her childhood, her life, the dreams she'd lost, the hope she still had, to climb inside her head and hear every thought, to be inside her lungs and feel every breath, inside her heart for every beat. So the next book that I read in September was Midnight by Beverly Jenkins. So this book is about Faith and Nicholas. So Faith works for her father at an inn, and her father makes her do backbreaking work. Like, she's just working from sun up till sundown every day. She never has a break. She wears rags because he won't put money into her at all. One day there is a meeting at the inn. It's like a group of black men who are meeting for some type of group, to pull together money for something. I can't remember what specifically. Nicholas shows up, and he happens to be the son of her father's enemy. This man, her father hated this man from with every inch of his being, and so he hates Nicholas. But Faith and Nicholas have instant chemistry, and her dad can see that, and he's like, he's not for you. You can't be with that man. He is not for you. This book is centered around the Revolutionary War. So this is in the 1700s instead of the 1800s. Faith happens to be a spy for the Americans, and her father happens to be not necessarily a spy, but he does allow British soldiers to come to the inn and have their secret meetings there. And so he just assumes that Faith agrees with him, but she's sneaking out at night to send letters to other agents and give them warnings about what's going on. She's kind of poised in the right position to be able to do that. One night, Nicholas sees her slipping out of the room from the inn, and he doesn't realize at first that she's the spy, because he has heard about her. She goes by Lady Midnight. He's heard about this spy, but he doesn't know who she is. He just knows that it's a woman, and he follows her a little bit and catches up to her, and they start talking to each other, and it just kind of goes from there. This is a really sweet one. I really liked Faith and Nicholas's chemistry. They just had really good banter between the two of them. It did get a little bit slow in the middle, but I feel like that tends to happen with Beverly Jenkins books. It's just kind of a thing I've noticed with her stories in general, so it wasn't surprising for me. I ended up giving this one 5 stars, 5 out of 5. I really, really like this. I know that Indigo is another book of hers that's also set around the Revolutionary War, and part of me wonders if it's got like a similar feel to it. Because I think in Indigo she is also a spy, so it kind of gave me an idea of what Indigo might be like as far as that story. And I feel like if you've read Indigo, you'll probably like this one as well. So check this one out if you are interested. This is not a very talked about Beverly Jenkins book, and I think it was really, really good. So yeah, Midnight. I did have a quote from Midnight that I really enjoyed. So it's basically him saying, "We're going to be lovers, Faith, and we both know it. It's been inevitable since the day we met. So allow me to show you what it means to be desired so that I can give you the desires of your heart." And I just thought that was really, really sweet. So the next book that I read in September was The Devil and the Heiress. This is by Harper St. George. This was another one that I really, really enjoyed. It was fun. I love the couple in here. It had some of my favorite tropes, and I feel like they were done very well. Those would be, we had a road trip, we had one bed, we had a caretaker scene, mutual pining, all the good stuff. So this book is about Christian and Violet. And Christian is described as a scoundrel and a bad boy, but honestly, you don't. You don't see any of those things in him. Um, and so Violet is, she's in London with her family to find a husband, but her dad is ready to get rid of her. He wants to marry her off. And so, she decides that she's going to run away because the guy that her family has chosen for her is this sleazy dude. He's just not for her, and he's not going to have her best interest at heart. And so she decides she's going to run away, and she bumps into Christian at a ball before all of this happens, and she kind of hints to him at the fact that she's going to plan to run away. And so he starts to have her spied on. And the day that she does run away, he shows up in his carriage and is like, "Oh, you're looking for a carriage to get somewhere? Come on, just hop on in and I'll take you to wherever it is you need to go." And he just kind of pretends like he doesn't know what's going on, that he doesn't realize she's running away. And he just kind of goes along with everything, again, pretending like he has no idea where she's going. But he has his own plans. He wants to take her to Scotland and marry her because he's decided that he wants to be with her. And so he's not telling her that not only was he spying on her, but he has plans to take her to Gretna Green and marry her. And so this obviously causes problems down the road, but they have a really sweet romance. And there's a caretaking scene in there where he takes care of her for like several weeks, and it's just beautiful. I really, really like this one. I wasn't as into the first book, so I was a little bit nervous coming into this one. I wasn't sure if it was the writer or if it was just that book, and I think it was just that book because for me, this one was really, really good. I ended up giving this one 5 stars as well. It had me pretty hooked. I think I ended up finishing this one in one sitting. From start to finish. I pretty much read it in one day, maybe twice in one day, but I finished it in one day. So I was really into this book, and I wasn't expecting that. So the next book I read was The Rakehill of Roth, or Rakehell of Roth. This is by Amelie Howard. So this book is about Isabel and Winter. Winter and Isabel, they basically were married kind of in a rush. He needed to marry to get his inheritance, and she needed to marry to get away from some guy that was hell-bent on marrying her. Like, this guy had it out for her, and she really did not want to marry him. He was very problematic. And it's basically a marriage of convenience for both of them, but they did have a mutual attraction to each other. Well, he basically takes her home. They have their wedding night, and then he leaves the next morning and disappears to London and doesn't come back for her. So for 3 years, she's out in the country, living at his father's home in the country, basically just kind of dwaddling around, trying to figure out what to do with her life because her husband has just dumped her here and she's got nothing to really do. She makes friends with a young woman in the country, and they start writing a column, raunchy column actually, called Lady Darcy, which is their pen name. Her friend is very, very, very funny. She's got 5 brothers, and so she knows all these raunchy things because her brothers are always talking about sex and stuff. So they use all the information that they glean from her brothers to write this Lady Darcy column. And it's kind of the only thing she's got going for her is her friend and this column. So one day she decides that she is sick and tired of being out in the country. She's sick and tired of her husband ignoring her. She reads these random things about him in the paper, and it's making him sound like he's just out there being a rake. And so she decides she's going to go to London. She goes with his father, who he does not like. um, so she goes with his father and they meet, and he basically is like, "You're not going to stay here. I'm going to find a way to make you want to go home." And she's like, "I'm going to find a way to make you want me." And so they basically have this bet, and they both kind of win in the end. But it's just a very interesting story, her being there and him trying to avoid her but wanting to be around her. It's just very interesting. I had a big issue with this book, and my issue was the fact that there was so much time spent on his dick and how hard he was for her, like all the time. And it was just, at a certain point, it was like, can we stop talking about his dick for a while here? Can we talk about anything else? We get it. He wants her. He really wants her. But can we talk about anything else? It just felt like it was an ode to his dick. And I was tired of it at a certain point. It really kind of drew the book down for me. But at the end of the day, it just kind of felt like we were way too focused on that and not as much on the actual romance of the story. And that just kind of took me out quite a bit. I did enjoy the Lady Darcy aspects of it, but it just felt like there was so much raunchiness and, like, yeah. Ended up giving it 3.5 stars. I would have given it a 4 if it hadn't been for the overzealous amount of talk about his dick. It was just too much. I just had a hard time believing that he actually loved her. It just felt like he lusted after her more than anything else. It felt like he was just lustful, and that was it. So the next book that I read was A Rogue by Any Other Name. This is part of the First Rule of Scoundrels series. This is the first book in the series, and this is Sarah MacLean. Here's a step back. So this book is about Michael and Penelope. Michael is Marquess, but when he is 21 years old, he is playing cards and he risks everything and he ends up losing everything to this man. And this man basically had it out to take all of his land, all of his property, all of his money. And he does. And Michael is pissed. He basically decides that he's going to rebuild himself and he's going to come back stronger than ever and he's going to win back his land, especially this land that has been with his family for like centuries. He has to win it back. It's everything he wants. And so 9 years later, he has he's part owner in a gaming den. Sorry, there is gambling at the gaming den. But he finally finds a way to get back the property that he lost. And it turns out the man that won it from him has sold it to Penelope's father. Penelope and Michael happened to have been friends when they were young. They actually used to write each other letters. They would spend time with each other in the summers when he would come to visit because her family's country house is right next door to this property that he is trying to win back. So it's now in Penelope's father's hands, and he has decided that the only way for a person to get that property is by marrying Penelope. Penelope is a spinster. She's like 28 at this point, and she has turned down every single guy that has asked her to marry them. She's turned down all of them, which I think was like 4 at this point. So she is out on the property one night walking around, and Michael finds her and he kidnaps her and ruins her so that she is forced to marry him. And of course, she is furious with him. He is cold, he's distant, he's not the man that she remembers him to be. And he just kind of does it and is like, you have to deal with it. It is what it is. Takes her home, but leaves her at the house and goes and spends time at the gaming den. So him being kind of hot and cold, it was annoying at times, because there were times where he would be very, very sweet to her, and then he'd kind of, close off again. And so that could get a little bit annoying. He definitely was trying his hardest to be very cold-hearted with her in the beginning, and it was like, why? She's your old friend. Like, is that absolutely necessary? So that kind of felt ridiculous. It was just kind of like, why are you doing this to both yourself and to her? But I think it's supposed to show that, he's been so upset for so many years that he has closed himself off to everything and everyone. But again, she does help him kind of warm his heart over time. And theirs is a good love story. I did like this one. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. This is only the second Sarah MacLean book I've ever read. But I like her writing so far. This was a good one for me. I don't remember the first book I read of hers, though. I think it was part of a different series, so I'm going to need to figure out which one to continue with. Probably I'll go with this one just because I remember this one more. It is new and fresh in my mind, but I did really like this one. So, A Rogue by Any Other Name. The next book I read in September is Once Upon a Tower by Eloisa James. I was a little bit nervous about this one because the last book I tried to read in this series, which was the Cinderella retelling, I think. Is it the Cinderella retelling? I don't remember which one it was, but I ended up DNFing it, so I was a little bit worried whether I would like this one or not. I do have a few quotes for A Rogue by Any Other Name. I will read them very quickly. So he says, "It was the only way to take my mind off the fact that I could not go home and take you to bed. You terrify me." She says, "How is that possible?" He says, "I can't take small tastes of you, love. I can only gorge on you. You're irresistible. I could easily become addicted to you." She says, is that bad?" He says, "For me, yes. Very, very bad." And then another one I have this is kind of like a declaration of his love, but he says, "I am yours, my love, yours to do with as you will. When I stole you in the dead of the night and claimed you for my own, how could I have known that now, tonight, forever, it would be I who am claimed? My heart is that. My heart is that is stolen." So, Once Upon a Tower by Eloisa James. So this is about Gowen and Edith, or Edie, as they call her. Gowen basically sees Edie at a ball one day and decides immediately that she is the woman he wants to marry. He talks to her father. He basically is like, "I want to marry your daughter." And her father is like, "Okay." And so Edie and Gowen are basically engaged to marry. Only issue is that she doesn't realize who he is. They had danced the first night of the ball, but she was so sick that she barely paid any attention to anything that night. So she doesn't even remember what he looks like. She just knows that she danced with this guy at the ball. And so they have a party, another get together, just so that these two can see each other again and get a chance to talk. And so when they do, sparks start to fly. They start to have conversations. Sparks fly some more. And so they do end up getting. So they end up getting married, and things get a little bit interesting from there on their wedding night. I'm not going to say what else happens. You have to read the book. But Yeah, it gets interesting. She's got a stepmother who is kind of the comedic relief. I feel like in all of these books, there's somebody who's kind of the comedy person. In the last book, it was the step aunt or auntie. In the first book, it was the hero himself. So in this book, it's her stepmother. Her stepmother is very funny. But Goen is he's very much a duke. He is a dukely man. He knows what he wants. He gets what he wants. He's accustomed to ordering people around. And it is very annoying for her at first. It's very much love at first sight, at least on his part, which usually I'm not really into love at first sight sort of stuff. But in this case, it kind of works out okay. I didn't dislike it. Something that I thought was really interesting in the book is that he's 22 years old and she's like 18 or 19. Usually the characters aren't that young in these books, but he's so well traveled and so well read, and he just kind of he feels very mature for his age. You do find out that he became the duke at like 14 years old, so he's had like seven, how many years is that, 7 years of being the duke since he was 14. I enjoyed the couple. They were very sweet on each other, and I always love couples like that. But again, I can't speak too much as to what happens in this book. It's definitely different. The point of contention in this story is not one that I've ever read about before. So, yeah, it's interesting. The part about her being in the tower is kind of hilarious. It really only happens towards like the last part of the book. But yeah, I like this one. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. So the next book that I read in September is The Wolf and the Wallflower. This is by Stacy Reid. This book was amazing. So we have Jules or Juliana, and James. And James has been lost in the Yukon for 10 years. He went missing when he was a teenager at like 18, I think. So he's been missing and he's eventually found 10 years later. And he is obviously not used to society anymore. Society is weird to him now. He's used to being alone. He's used to the quiet. He's used to animals and not humans. So he's just having a rough go at adjusting to being back with society. And so Jules is a young woman who was raised to be a boy. Her mother was scared that her father would make her get pregnant again. He had this whole thing about having a son, like he had to have a son. And so she basically decides, like he assumes that the baby is a boy and she's like, let's just let him continue to assume the child is a boy until the baby's like a year or two old, and then hopefully I'll be well enough again to have a baby. But it doesn't happen. And so 23 years later, we have poor little Jules here, still pretending to be a boy. Even though she's gone through puberty and everything, she still pretends to be a boy around everybody. And, she's kind of still keeping this secret, not only for herself, but for her mother as well. And so Jules's father is a psychiatrist or psychologist, and he is brought in by James's mother to basically help him readjust to society. And Jules's father basically has her help him with reestablishing James into society. On their first meeting, James smells her and he can tell that Jules is not a man. And so he basically asks that he work only with Jules during this time period because they both have to, what was it that he said? They both have to disguise themselves from society. Him as playing a role to make everybody happy, and her just playing her role of being a man. And so they have a very quick friendship. He really opens up to her like immediately in a way that he's not opening up to anybody else. And so their relationship kind of starts from there. And this one was amazing. I wrote, "So good, I'll be dreaming about it" in my reading journal. And I did have a dream about this book. You can't help but feel for James. Just after everything he's been through, people are so restrictive with him. They're like, you have to act this way and you have to act that way. And, you know, he's meant to meet with the queen and he has to prove that he is sound mind enough to continue being a duke. Otherwise they will take his dukedom away and give it to someone else. And so his mother is freaking out that, you know, he's going to lose his dukedom because maybe he's not mentally stable enough to prove that he is capable of being a duke. And it's very clear that he is of sound mind. It's just the aspects of society and acting in a way that society wants him to act that are freaking everybody out. Like he'll be running around on the grounds without a shirt on and people are like, "Oh my God, he's naked, he's naked." And, you know, just things like that where it's like, he's just, you know, he's adjusting and there are things that he's not used to, you know, freedoms that he had before that he doesn't have anymore. And he's trying to find ways to have that freedom again and it's freaking everybody out. So it's just one of those things where you really feel for him. And you feel for Jules as well. Jules is really kind of stuck in this situation where, you know, in some ways she wants to kind of be a girl just to see what it's like. But in a lot of ways, she's happy with her life as a boy and feels like if she gives that up to be a woman, she's giving up so much freedom. And so yeah, you just feel for both of them in this story. I really, really love this one. I gave this 5 stars, obviously. Honestly, I might give it 6 stars. I loved it that much. It's really, really good. So the last book that I read in September is this is Karen Rainey, When the Laird Returns. This is the second book in the Highland Lord series. And I loved the first book in this series. I think I gave it 5 stars. So this book is about the eldest son of the characters from the first book. So he has basically taken over in his parents' place. He will become the Earl of Sherborne and take over his father's place as an earl. But we've got Alistair and Isabel. And Isabel is the daughter of a laird who is an ass. He is a royal pain in everybody's butt. He is abusive. He treats her and her mother like shit. And everybody's scared of him. So Alistair returns from Nova Scotia, where his family grew up. That's where they ran away to in the first book, was Nova Scotia. And he comes back to Scotland, back to Gilmar, the island, that his parents grew up in. It's his family's ancestral home. And, you know, his parents have told him about this place his entire life, so he's excited to return. And he decides that he wants to take the land back for the McCraes, which is his family, the McCrae Island, or not island, but the McCrae lands. And so he decides he's going to take back Gilmar. Well, Gilmar has been basically taken over by Isabel's father. He just took the land because nobody was there. The McCraes had all left the land. Isabel's father decides that the only way he's going to give the land back to Alistair is if he, one, pays him money, and two, marries his daughter. He is not happy about the marrying his daughter part, even though she's beautiful, she's sweet. He doesn't want to be married right now. It's not in the cards for him, but he really, really, really wants Gilmar back. And so he decides that he's going to marry her. But when he has the chance, he will annul the marriage and get on with his life. He doesn't want to have to deal with any of this. This was a really good one. I really liked Alistair. He was very, very kind, very sweet man. You know, he had his faults, but at the end of the day, he's just so sweet. I really like him. He's so affectionate. There's some caretaking in here, and he does a great job of caring for her. He's just a sweet man. I love him. I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars. And I literally just finished reading this yesterday, so still thinking about this one. But yeah, this is a good one. If you like Karen Rainey, or if you just want some Scottish Highland novels, she has a lot of Highland books to dive into. Her writing is very poetic in a lot of ways. She can be a little overly descriptive at times, which could get annoying for me every once in a while. It was like, okay, let's move on. We understand what the place looks like. Let's move on with the story. But as a whole, I really like her writing style. So yeah, this was a good one. 4.5. It didn't feel like a full 5-star book, but it didn't feel like 4 was enough. So I gave it 4.5. But this was the last book I read for this month, and I'm just excited at the fact that I was able to finish 12 books in 1 month. That is just insane to me. So yeah, I'm just excited, and I'm excited to see how many books I can get through next month. Like I said, my goal for this year was 100, and I have been behind. I didn't do very well in April and May. In fact, I think I haven't done a wrap up for those 2 months. So maybe I'll do a wrap up for those 2 months. But I think between April and May, I only read like 7 and 8 books, or 7 to 8 books. And so I'm quite behind on my 100 book challenge for the year. So picking up speed and reading more books right now is hopefully going to help me reach my goal. So yeah, I'm just really excited about everything I read this month. I feel like I had a much better reading month this month than I did last month. I had pretty much all 4s and 5s, it feels like. So yeah, really good reading month. Really happy with how many books I read. So September was a great month for me. Otherwise, if you've made it to the end of this very long video, give me a book emoji, specifically the one with the pages open. Give me that book emoji. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day. Leave some comments if you've read any of these, what you thought about them, how they made you feel. I just really, I'm still thinking about all these books because they're all just so good. So if you've read any of these, please leave some comments below or just let me know what you're currently reading so we can have a chat in the comments section. All right, everybody. Bye.